Hey everyone, welcome back to Big Ol' TCG. Today we're doing a deck tech for one of the newest heroes from Super Slam, Kayo Underhanded Cheat. This deck we're going to go over what this hero wants to do in the meta, his place, and kind of the deck strategy. He's very different from the other KO and quite different from Brutes in general. So I think he's a pretty interesting deck. He's a very value heavy deck, fairly defensive as well. So if you like getting really good numbers from your cards and you like being quite defensive, I think this is the deck for you. So KO Underhanded Cheat, he's a reviled brute hero. You start the game with one weapon zone, just like all KOs do. And then as an instant, you can pay 4 resources to tap him and then turn one of your target attack actions into a base of 6 power. So this can be up to a +5 gain, of course. Well, it could be a 6 if it starts with 0, but most stuff starts at the lowest of 1. So this is usually like an increase of 5 or so. And then when the crowd boos you, you create a vigor token. So one of the main strategies of the deck is using the ability to increase a lot of 1 power stuff to 6 to get that 5 value. And by doing so, you want to pitch a blue and then use the vigor that your hero ability creates. So you need to be booing most turns, or a lot of turns, and then pitching a blue to get the 4 resources here off the vigor in that. The main card we're doing that with is Mocking Blow, so we're playing all 9 copies of Mocking Blow. The red is pretty incredible, especially if you have it set up right. So the important part of this deck is staying at higher life. That's really what you want to do. You're going to be blocking with equipment really early. So in a lot of brute games, you hold Scowling Flesh Bag until really late when they do a big pop off turn. KO Underhanded Cheat, you're using Scowling on like the second or third turn of the game usually. You're going to be out of equipment pretty early. But it's because you want to stay at a higher life total because Mocking Blow is just so strong when you're at a higher life total. So it's a 0 cost. It says when this attacks a hero, if you have more life than them, the crowd boos you, so you need to stay higher. And if you've been booed this turn, this gets +4. So first off, if you're at higher, the crowd boos you, so you make that vigor token. Then it'll get +4 because you've been booed. So then it's a 0 for 5, right? Because it's 1 plus 4. And then if you can set its base to 6, it is going to become 10 total power. It'll be 6 plus this 4. So you get to deal 10 damage and make a vigor. And you can do that pretty easily off 2 cards if you have a blue and tunic or a blue and another vigor. So you can chain these together really well. If you can play 3 turns in a row of red Mocking Blow, you're pretty happy because it's effectively 10 value for 2 cards, right? You're attacking for 10 off of just this and a blue and hoping to loop that into another 10 value. So if you can do 2 card 10 and then block with your other 2 cards for, 3 and 3 or 3 and 4, you're pretty happy to get that 16 to 17 value from most hands, and that's usually enough value to win the game. So that's kind of the main strategy. The other card that cares about it is Big Bully here. This is a 2 for 4, but if you have more life, the crowd boos you once again. And if you've been booed this turn, this card's power is doubled. So it'll be a 2 for 8, making that vigor if you've been booed. Usually you want to have just 1 blue with this to make it a 2 for 8 with a boo, or 2 blues, and then you can activate a hero ability with the 4 floating to make this 6, and then it'll double that to 12, which is pretty nice. You can do that at any time. The doubled stays all turn, so you can wait till reacts and do it then, and let your opponent not be 100% sure if you're going to pitch that second blue to double it or not, which is pretty nice. That's the nice thing about this being an instant is your opponent's never quite sure if you're going to arsenal that last card or if you're going to pitch it to KO's ability. The rest of the deck is basically just big attacks and defensive tools. So we have Sink Below here as a D-React. We also have Shelter from the Storm. And then we have some life gain with Sigil of Solace and Fiddler's Green. So the life gain is important to stay at higher life. And then we've got some just huge attacks that are big values. We've got Show of Strength, Swing Big, Command and Conquer, Strongest Survive, and Send Packing. So some nice disruption, some nice 2 for 8s or 2 for 6s. Sometimes you just have to show no fear with this deck to get big value. So if you have a Tunic or a Vigor resource and you have a blue, and you have one of these 2 for 8s or 2 for 6s, right? One of these 2 cost attacks, you might think, oh, I just pitch the 2, swing for 8, and pass with 2 floating. But if you Scab Skin Leathers, you have a 50% chance to be able to get 3 extra damage in there. Sometimes you just gotta believe. just believe that Scab Skin Leathers will convert you into 3 extra damage, and you'll hopefully get there. The blue suite's pretty interesting. This is a really high blue count brute deck with 26 blues. It actually started out originally at like 33 or something, but didn't really didn't find I needed that many, so it's cut down. The best blue is Nimby. This card's so funny that we're playing blue Nimby, but it's actually pretty insane value. So it's a blue, right? So a lot of times you're just pitching it. But if you attack with it and you have any floating resource, like so if you have a vigor or a tunic, you can grab a blue nimblism and then activate your hero ability, right? So you have one floating already. You need to have a vigor or a tunic, but then you can pitch the nimblism to activate hero, and that makes this all by itself 0 for 6 because it's finding the nimblism itself. It's just a 0 for 6, like a blue that is a 0 for 6. It's just pretty funny. So downside is they block for 2, but the upside is just so high that a lot of times it's kind of red for our deck because you want to just actively be resolving that a lot of the time. Pretty funny that you just have this blue 0 for 6 in our deck, but it is what it is. It's quite strong. We have Booze. This card gets blocked with most of the time or pitched. The nice thing is when it enters, it unconditionally boos you. So if you are at lower life and you really need the boo, you can use this to get booed, and then Mocking Blows and Big Bully are all turned on to get that power increase, which is pretty nice. Outside Interference, this is a really funny card. I think the only card in Flesh and Blood that does this, really. As an instant, you can discard this, and you can reveal a reviled attack action card from your inventory and put it into your hand. It's a blue, 0 block, 6 power. The interesting thing is when you discard it, it turns on the go again for Mandible Claws, because you have to discard a card with 6 or more power. So we often want a Mandible Claws with the Outside Interference. There's a few cards we have to grab. There's 4 cards you can grab from the sideboard here. The most often are Big Bully here. We have the 3rd copy sitting here. This is just nice to grab a lot of times. If you have a floating already, you can pitch a blue, keep Outside Interference in any blue. Pitch a blue to swing Claw, discard Outside Interference as an instant to give a go again. And then grab Big Bully, and with your 2 floating, swing that, assuming you have a Tunic or Vigor or something, which you're floating most turns because you get booed so often. You can see we have 12 copies of booing, plus this, plus Tunic. You should have a floating resource like most turns, the majority of turns, in which case you usually have roughly 4 resources to work with. So you can do that line. You can also, if you don't have that floating resource and you have a second blue still, you can go for the Bask in Your Own Greatness line, which is where you do the blue with Claw, discard this, and then you'll have 1 floating, so you can come in with this and make 1 might, which isn't that bad. And if you don't have any other blue in hand, but you still want to Claw, you can just grab the old Switcheroo. It's just another blue, and then you can pitch it right away to Claw. So you do have to do that before you Claw, but then you can pitch it to Claw, and you'll have 1 floating to swing what else. So if you have like a Command and Conquer or a Swing Big or Show of Strength or something, if you have a 2 cost, you can, and you have no other blue, you can use the old Switcheroo as its own blue. Obviously, you can also do the Clash thing sometimes, but that almost never comes up. And if they happen to be revered, this is fine. Tear down the idols. I also mostly grab this for its 3 block. Sometimes you really want this to block for 3. So you can just discard it as an instant on your opponent's turn to grab this to block for 3. It's kind of nice. You can also block with Big Bully or Old Switcheroo, but I'd rather keep those in the sideboard in case we want to grab them off the other 2 Outside Interference. Overcrowded. Great blue. It's one of my favorite blues in the game now. Basically always blocks for 3 because we have a Vigor most turns, and then if your opponent has any other differently named auras, it's going to get a buff, so it blocks for a lot. Steal Victory is pretty fun as well. If they have aura tokens, you can steal them when you block with it. So against Kayos, you can grab their mites. Against Fangs and Syndras, you can grab their fealties. You can grab Vigors or Confidences. You can grab Embodiment of Earths. Pretty fun. Embodiment of Lightnings. Lots of stuff to steal. Rowdy Locals. It's a solid blue. It's probably the worst one in the deck, but there is a little synergy here with Fiddler's Green. So if they let it hit and you want to discard a card so they do, you can discard your Fiddler's Green to still gain 3 life. It's kind of fun. If they defend it, it gets +2, so you can turn it into a 6 with your ability, and it's kind of like a 2-card 8, which is kind of nice. It's like copying a Mocking Blow, basically. Yeah, it's fine. And then Trot Along is nice to give one of our low power stuff go again. So we can give a Mocking Blow go again, or give Mandible Claw go again. Just a nice turn extender. Sideboard is mostly for if we need to become more aggressive. So we've got Looking for Scraps, which have a ton of targets in the deck, and Villainous Pose for a nice front buff. These 4 cards mostly stay in the sideboard because they are for grabbing off of outside interference. And then Take It on the Chin is a nice way to get some agilities, and also if they deal arcane damage, we can prevent some extra with this. So you're mostly sighting out D-Reacts, like you can take out the Shelter from the Storms, the Fiddler's Greens, and the Sink Belows to add in these go wide cards like Looking for a Scrap, Villainous Pose, and Take It on the Chin. These let you go a bit wider into stuff like Gravy or maybe Verdance or Florian, whereas the main deck is really good at blocking. So for against stuff like KO or Syndra, you kind of want to block a lot more, right? You do sometimes have to sideboard stuff out against even KO because Show of Strength and Strongest Survive are not going to get a lot of value into KO. So maybe you want to side those out and still put in like the Villainous Poses and the Take It on the Chins, maybe. But yeah, the sideboard's not 100%. Anyways, the deck is really fun. It can get a lot of like 2-card 10s or 2-card 11s if you just believe in yourself. You can do it with outside interference, like I talked about, doing Claw into a 2 for 8 if you grab Switcheroo. 2 for 10 off of the Mocking Blow. Also, just a 2 for 11 with Scab Skins into a 2 for 8. So there's a lot of really good value in the deck. It's kind of a block with 2 cards, swing 2 cards almost every turn. So if you like that kind of strategy, yeah, I think RKO is the deck for you. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you next time.